Well, it's that time of the year. It is draft season, and of course, quarterbacks are always what we talk about the most. So I figured, why not give my rankings of the top 10 quarterbacks heading into the 2023 NFL Draft. Without further ado, let's just get into it. Number 10, Aidan O'Connell out of Purdue. There's definitely some issues on his tape. Again, I don't know how much I love these kind of lower tier guys, to be honest. He's someone who's, sort of a pure pocket passer, doesn't have a big arm. You see a lot of air under his throws, and he was number 1 on turnover-worthy plays, according to PFF, last season. That's not ideal. You know what is ideal? He makes reads pretty well, and I think in a perfect situation could be this year's Brock Purdy. I could see a scenario like that happening. Am I betting on it? No, but I could see it, and I think that's his upside, which is why I have him at number 10. Number 9, out of Fresno State, Jake Haener, a guy who, has a high completion percentage. That's something that you like, although he doesn't throw it very far too often, so it might be more of a scheme thing than actually something that he does well. Again, someone who protects the football and is a good game manager type. He got better every year he was in college, so, there's some things to like about him, again, as a potential Brock Purdy upside type player. One thing that you have to notice is that a lot of air on his throws. There's occasionally he'll have some zip, but the reality is, he puts his entire body into each one of his throws. It's, he's really getting everything he can out of it. So, hey, there's some issues. That's why he might not get drafted, but I can see a scenario where it could maybe work out. If you want a third quarterback, he wouldn't be the worst guy to go after late in the draft, I think. Number 8, Tanner McKee, who I kept pronouncing Tanner McKee on the podcast. My bad about that. 6'6" guy out of Stanford. The height is definitely good. And listen, people always make fun of, oh, you like a quarterback because they're tall, but there is value in that. There is a definitive upside to a quarterback being tall. Now, that's not the only thing that matters, but it's just one of the many traits that you can look at. I think that that's fine. Very accurate. That's definitely something I will say, but he's just not someone who, to me, fits football in 2023. I think he plays very cautious. Also doesn't have a huge arm, I would say. It has a bit of a weird throwing motion on top of it. So there's things to like about Tanner McKee, not to be confused with Tanner McKee, but again, as a whole, to me, he feels like he is backup upside, not starter upside. Number 7, DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a guy who, the reality is, to me, this is an example of, it's 2023, this is the kind of quarterback that could work in the NFL. Now, to me, he still is a guy who I'm not drafting for anything other than like a backup type scenario. That's just how I view him. I do not consider him to be a guy who I expect a ton from. I just don't, because the reality is he misses throws pretty consistently. He plays a very simple system. He did look better these past couple years, I have to say. Another guy who got better as his career went along, and that's something that you like to see. And the reality is, the reason why I still have hope for him is he's such a good athlete. He's he can move very well, and that could be a way he could turn into maybe a Tyrod Taylor type player where he can use his legs to make it easier on his arm and stuff like that. Still not someone I would draft with a day 1 pick or a day 2 pick, I don't think, but day 3 pick, sure, totally fine with it. Number 6, I have Steston Bennett out of Georgia, a guy who, the 25-year-old 5'11" quarterback, which that alone is going to make some people say, okay, we're not drafting you. But, he's a 2-time national champion, and I think that I do think that he's gotten better, and people are still using kind of younger Bennett as kind of their grading curve instead of paying attention to what happened recently. That's what I think. I could be wrong. Maybe people don't like last year either. But, he's someone who I do feel like can run an offense very well. He can move well. I think that's underrated part of his game. He mastered the Georgia offense. Had plenty of time to do it, but still, he mastered it. I think he is a quality game manager type backup solid player. I'm not drafting him to be a starter, but if I'm looking for a backup, he's someone I could see doing it. To me, he is the ultimate high floor, low ceiling type player in this draft class. He just is. I think that I feel pretty confident. I don't know how much better he's going to get than this, to be honest, but I think this would still be okay. Obviously, the things against him are his age, his size, and he was in a great situation in Georgia, so how much credit does he deserve? Not a ton, but he deserves a little. So, again, when we're talking about the backups, he is my favorite of the quarterbacks I'm drafting, purely because I think they're just going to be a backup. Next up is Will Levis out of Kentucky, a player who, I made a video talking about how I just don't get him. I don't get why people are as crazy about him. I mean, I get it a little bit. I did think he had a solid 2021 year. I didn't think it was as good as other people were saying it was, but I thought that was solid, although last year just was not good. Now, he was in a terrible situation at Kentucky. Everyone knows that. He's going to be one of the few players who gets in a better situation once he gets to the NFL. That's 100% true. There's things to like about him. He can throw when he's getting hit. He can throw a good check down, which seems silly, but it's true. I do have to say, though, kind of a lot of what he gets credit for is like that big arm, but I didn't see it on tape. I just didn't. On tape, he put a lot of air under his throws. Defensive backs were able to come back and make plays. That's what I saw on tape from what I watched, so I wasn't crazy about it. I think the arm's a bit overrated. His accuracy is terrible. I don't love his throwing motion, and I don't think he can throw off balance accurately. I mean, he can't throw accurately. He can't. Like, Richardson's getting all the attention for being inaccurate, but Levis also has accuracy issues, and I think that he has nowhere near the athleticism of a Richardson. He at times overestimated his athleticism in college. That got him in trouble. So certainly at the NFL level, it will get him in trouble. So again, there's enough stuff to like about him that sure, I can see why a team could talk themselves into him, but I wouldn't. Number 4, we have Hendon Hooker, a guy who, it's interesting. I was ready to pound the table and say, this guy is my guy. Everyone pay attention to Hendon Hooker. And then Chris Sims went out and said, this guy's amazing. And he was even higher on Hooker than I was. So I'm like, okay, I guess I can't be the Hendon Hooker guy. But I still like him. I still think he's good. There's basically just, two main things we can talk about with Hooker. Is that the first thing is his tape is good. I mean, he's a good runner. He can throw the ball a long way. Not with a ton of accuracy, but, he's relatively accurate middle of the field. And he can throw the ball a long way. There still is value there. So he feels like an NFL quarterback when you watch him, but he's 25 years old, and he's coming off of a torn ACL. I mean, that's a concern, and there's other concerns. His accuracy isn't great. He's not great under pressure. I don't know what his upside is without the fact that he's 25 and was beating up on kids a lot younger than him, and he hasn't torn ACL, so he's not going to play until he's, 26, 27. Those are concerning. And because of that, I couldn't really see myself drafting him with a real quality first-round pick. But to me, he feels like a first-rounder. He feels like the end of the first-round type guy because, well, yes, there are concerns. Find me a quarterback there aren't concerns in the NFL draft. You're just not going to. So I wouldn't hate the idea of drafting him late in the first round, or certainly taking a flyer on him if he falls past that point, which I suspect that he will. Number 3, Anthony Richardson, who might be the most controversial player in this draft. I have him at 3, though, and I wouldn't hate drafting him 3rd overall if you're a team. Cardinals won't do it, but trading up to 3rd overall and drafting him then, have no issue with that. Listen, very raw, no denying it. His accuracy is a huge issue. It just is, but he's 6'4". He's built like a defensive edge rusher, and he runs like a fast defensive edge rusher. His athleticism, you can't be taught. And while the accuracy is such an issue that it's definitely could derail his career immediately before it even really begins, his running will give him a higher floor than his throwing will. His running will still give him a relatively high floor, allow him to hopefully stay in the league long enough, like say a Justin Fields, for example, who still hasn't shown he's an effective passer, but because of how well he runs the football, the Bears just trade away the 1st overall pick and are willing to, build around him because they love how well he runs. Could Anthony Richardson do that and then develop as a passer in the NFL? That's the hope. Number 2 is Bryce Young, which of course, when there's 2 quarterbacks at the top of the list, you have to be pro one and anti the other, but I am not that way. I like Bryce Young a lot. I think he's really good. I think he's great. He can move to set the pass well. He understands things that a lot of young guys just don't get, like how, you can move to create better angles to throw. That's just not something that players that are 21 years old can do. Typically, he reads defenses well. He understands how to throw receivers open, such as like back shoulders and things like that. Just in general, he understands the game. He's a smart player. Like that's what he does. And even off script, he does a very good job. He can avoid a sacks due to athleticism, but I wonder how well it will work in the NFL. That's something I have to say. I wouldn't say an elite arm, but a good arm. I would still say a good arm. The thing is that he, takes too many hits. He does. He'll miss some throws under pressure for sure. He needs to learn to protect himself better. Is another big thing for his size. That's a bad combination. It just is, and it concerns me a lot. I also think he holds onto the ball a bit too long and will, at times try to make the throw. He probably shouldn't. Some of those stuff you can work on, but really my biggest concern is sort of his lack of size, along with how he doesn't really protect himself very well. That's a real concern, and I think something that could derail his career, but I don't think it will. I would bet on him succeeding. Number 1, I have CJ Stroud. Number 1 on my list. I think he's an amazing athlete. He really is. He's an amazing runner. He's very accurate downfield. He's my favorite downfield passer, personally. He can throw off balance. He can avoid sacks with his legs in a way that, I believe will work at the NFL. I really do. I think people underestimate his speed. Like, people take poor angles because they don't think he's as quick. I wish he ran more in college. That's kind of the one knock I would say, because he was so good at it. Hopefully in the NFL he utilizes that a little more, but I think he has really good awareness of just what's happening on the field, understands that stuff. Again, played for Ohio State, we get it, all day to throw, guys were wide open, absolutely true, but I think there's still enough tape to evaluate even when that wasn't happening. Listen, don't love when he's pressured up the middle. Feels like his footwork gets very Drew Lock-like. There's some issues there. He will miss some throws. Those are my concerns. I don't think there's any perfect prospect. I think everyone is, could be a bust. If you told me in 5 years, all these guys were bust, I'd say that's surprising, but I can see it. But he's the one I feel like, I'm the biggest fan of is CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. But yeah, that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.